Welcome to RELOGIA, where all disciplines connect via art, sci, tech, trialogues. On the science chair, Dr. Maria Vicente, Open Science Hub Network, Leiden University, the Netherlands.
Hello, good afternoon. First of all, thank you so much for the opportunity of being here. It has been really a stimulating conference. So my name is Maria. I'm the project manager of a European project called Open Science Hub, and I'm coming from Leiden University. I'm going to tell you a bit about this network, which is a partnership. Wait, sorry, how do I do this? How should I do this? I'll try again. Okay, now it's several, I see. Okay, so this project, as I was telling you, it's a project that includes several partners across Europe. It's coordinated by Leiden University. As you can see, it goes from Ireland to Portugal, Italy, Switzerland, and so on and so forth. Well, but it's not here, sorry. It's over there, okay. So actually this project, Open Science Hub, started as a challenge from a call from the European Commission. Actually, it has been mentioned, this called the SWOFs, the Science Sweden for Society, and this one was about open schooling, where the challenge was, how can schools, in a cooperation with other stakeholders, how can they become an agent of community well-being? And how can we encourage the involvement of families, and how can other stakeholders actually become real partners in the development of projects? So following on this project, we submitted a proposal where the idea is that open science hubs, they bring together science, technology, innovation, research, closer to the daily life of local communities. So we are currently establishing a network of 8 open science hubs across European communities, and the idea is that we're going to establish these open science hubs in geographical and social border regions. What do I mean by this? For instance, in Portugal, where I've been working for the last years, we have piloting one of these projects in a rural area in Portugal. But for instance, in the Netherlands, we're going to establish this open science hub in The Hague, in a more underserved or disadvantaged region. So basically the idea of the open science hubs is these community hubs that will support schools becoming active agents in their own community. So how can schools be a space and how can they constitute teams where they can actually tackle local relevant challenges? So, as I was mentioning, so open science hubs, what they do is that they collaborate with schools so that schools can be spaces in community that think about challenges that are relevant for them. And then by providing them and by helping them adapting educational resources and collaborating with different stakeholders, we want schools to create local impact in their own communities. So I'm going to tell you a bit. So we have been piloting this project in Portugal for the last 2.5 years. And we started recently the network with these 9 European partners, which got funded by the EU very recently. So I'm going to first talk a bit about how we are going to establish this network and what is the methodology and the framework that we would like to establish for the different open science hubs across Europe. And then I'm going to give you some examples from the pilot that we have been developing in Portugal. So first, let me just give you what are the pillars of this project, which are quite important for us. So the open science hubs want to be something that grows or that arises from bottom up. So we want to work together with the pre-existing communities in not working as some new entity that just arises in a given place or in a given community. So the first step, of course, is to know your community, to know exactly which pre-existing initiatives exist, which partners exist already in these communities where the open science hubs are being established, and what are actually and to understand what are the local challenges. Of course, since we are working on a global network, at the same time, we also want these projects to have a local impact, but at the same time, to be talked at a global level. So, and I'm going to talk about that in the next slides. We will define global open schooling missions that then will be the basis or the trigger to then develop projects with local impact that are oriented by these same missions. Then, as I mentioned, we want schools to be the driver in the communities. So the idea is that then we are going to collaborate together with schools so that then they can incorporate these same mechanisms in their own times, in their own assets, in their own resources, with their own teams. And then, of course, these projects aim to be in collaboration with different community stakeholders. And as has been mentioned today, already a couple of times, we want to do this based on best practices. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. So there's a lot of resource around the world with good impact. So one of the objectives is also to do an assessment and the compilation of these good practices and also to use and contribute to open resources. Okay. So what is as I was telling you, so we've been piloting this project in Portugal for the last 2.5 years, but now I'm going to tell you how we are going to implement these ideas at the network level and what is the methodology that we want to have for the network. So what I mean by this is that since we are going to have so much diversity and we want these open science hubs to be so context dependent, we at the same time we would like to have a common framework that would allow us to have some kind of research and some methodology that would allow us to compare the way that the open science hub are progressing in the different worlds, so in the different communities. So right now I'm going to tell you how the project is being established and how it will be implemented in the different countries. So in the first year, the way we started, as I was telling you, is by knowing the different communities where we're establishing the open science hubs. So what we are actually currently already doing is to map stakeholders and to do stakeholder analysis in each of these communities and to map what are pre-existing initiatives that exist. And this is an example. For instance, this is actually from a different project, actually a very inspiring project from an European project, which is called Civics. And this is an example, for instance, in Madrid, where they have been mapping social innovation initiatives and trying to build local maps for the communities to be aware of these projects. Then we want to identify local challenges with the different local communities. And a very preliminary analysis showed us already some challenges that exist. And as you can see, there are already some common challenges that might exist in between different communities in the different countries. Then, of course, as I was telling you, so the schools here are going to be the drivers for these projects to happen. So we need to establish relationships with schools and to see together with teachers, the direction boards, and with the teams that exist at school, what are the times, what are the assets, what are the resources, how can we work in schools in a way that is sustainable for them and that eventually in the future can lead to institutional change. Then, on the other side, as I was telling you, we would like to have a global framework. So we will be working with this open schooling global missions, which is a strategy that is inspired from this mission-oriented research and innovation in the European Union, which has been proposed by Mariana Mazzucato, where the idea is that how can we transform these sustainable developmental goals into achievable and measurable missions that then can orient projects that can be tackled at the local level. So after identifying the local challenges in the different local communities, we will think what are the different global missions that we can establish across the different open science hubs so that we can have global goals, but that then projects that can have a local impact. Then, as I told you, we are also doing an evaluation in terms of what are best practices and also on open standards. And very importantly, each open science hub is going to establish a local management board. And this local management board is going to be a team of relevant stakeholders in each community. For instance, representatives from schools, from companies, from organizations, from families, so that this group of people that are part of each given community is going to contribute to each key decision in each location. And then each open science hub will have its own space, which can be a long-term space, or it can be a room in a school, for instance. It depends on the local context. This is, for instance, the space that we have in Portugal, it's by the Douro River, which the municipality offered us this space, which was abandoned by the time, and it was like the previous primary school in this community. But for instance, in some other places, maybe we'll have just a room in a school, as I told you, and we will need to adapt the space according to that. Okay, then in terms of strategy, as I told you, taking these open schooling global missions, we will then try to define together with the local communities and with these local management boards, these projects that can have a local impact. And finally, not finally, but as a super important step, we will establish a plan with the schools and the local stakeholders in order to create local impact. Of course, all of this is going to be, there will be a communication and dissemination strategy that will follow the project. Then on the second year of the project, we will actually going to implement this strategy in the schools, which is going to be, it's going to be accompanied by a learning assessment and impact evaluation. And in the third year, we will want to be able to scale this. And of course, we are also working with Impact Hub in Italy, in this case, to develop a sustainability and legacy strategy in order to think how can these open science hubs be sustainable after the funding of the European Union. Okay, so now I'm going to give you, my last 2 minutes are going to be about the pilot that we have been developing in Portugal for the last 2.5 years. So, where I actually worked for the last years before moving to the Netherlands, where I'm now coordinating the European project. So in Portugal, the Open Science Hub is in the border between Portugal and Spain, in a low-density territory. I always give this example. The population density in this place is of 12 inhabitants per square kilometer. In the municipality, at the district level, is of 30 inhabitants per square kilometer. In Lisbon, for instance, is of 6,000. So it's besides being a place with low density territory, it's a place with low access to science, technology, and innovation, and there's a high failure and dropout, a high skill failure and dropout rate, and there are several different challenges. And I'm going to give you an example of a brief example of 3 projects that we have been working, or at least the strategies that we have been employing in Portugal for the last years. So on one hand, we have been developing tools with teachers to try to think how can we take this project-based learning to inside the classroom, and we have been working in a discipline which is called of citizenship and development, and the idea how can we, for instance, try to take this design thinking-based principles to inside the classroom, where we have these different phases from identifying the problem, thinking about different alternatives, implementing the project, evaluating it, So this is being done in collaboration with teachers, where we are co-developing a manual with them, where we produce the different activity plans or the lesson plans with teachers, and then they'll go to the classroom and then they test it, they implement it in order to test it, and we keep updating it in this continuous loop where we have this continuous training of teachers throughout the year. On the waste management perspective, as actually has been talked about before as well, we are also using this precious plastic project that was mentioned in a previous project. But the idea here is, so the projects that we are developing are not only to create impact in the local communities, but at the same time we also want these projects to allow us to gather data and to understand what are the habits and routines of the community. So for instance, in this project in particular, it's a project on circular economy. What we suggest, and another important aspect, is that, again, we want schools to be the driver then to engage their families. So in this case, what we ask is, we ask students to bring us their trash. So we make calls every 2 weeks of specific trash that we want them to bring. And then we created a local coin where there is some kind of an exchange, a transaction between the trash that they give us and the amount of coins or the number of coins that they will be given. Then this trash is going to be transformed into more sustainable products by local recycling techniques, as the precious plastic or some others that we can then talk about. So then their families can change their habits by buying these products as well. And these projects, the way we select them is by actually doing participatory events with the community to try to assess what are useful and products that the communities will actually use. So this is the techniques that we use for the local recycling. Finally, a super important problem that we have in this region. So we have the Douro River that goes comes from Spain and then flies into the and then flows into the Atlantic. And because of the river cruise traffic, there is this notion, although there is no data for that, that the pollution that the river pollution has been increasing every year. We in Portugal, we are a partnership with the municipality, with the local municipality, and we felt that the municipality, because of all the economic lobbying that exists because of the river cruises, didn't want to compromise in doing analysis to the river. So we tried to use science and technology as the means to find legitimacy to do this analysis in the river. So we partnered with this project that is actually based in the Netherlands. It's a citizen science project called Drinkable Rivers. And they are establishing different water lab hubs across Europe where they actually support them, train them, and provide them with initial kits for analyzing the waters of their rivers. So through this, we started now analyzing the quality of the water of this river with students. Every month we do this. So this was the way of, on one hand, to try to tackle local relevant challenging, involving the school, and at the same time creating this local impact. So to finalize, so open science hubs, just to give you again this notion. So the objective is that they are community hubs that work as mediators, as platforms in local communities, in geographical or social border regions, where they support schools to tackle local relevant challenges. Thank you.
On the Tech Chair, Dr. Bojana SUZIC, Scientific Researcher in Process and Product Engineering Department, University of Applied Sciences, FHV, Austria.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today I will present to you a small talk about the future of cities in the era of interdisciplinary co-creation that is based on digital technologies and end-user design. These are famous principles today that are used at the European policy level that are based on quadruple helix networks, which I will explain in the next slides. For my starting reference point, I will use a quote from a famous thinker of our time, which is Gregory Bateson, who is interdisciplinary thinker who was using holistic perspective and system thinking is his creation. And in this regard, he was a scientist, he was artist, he was philosopher also. He was everything but a person who wanted to extend his horizons of his mind. And information is a difference, that makes a difference, could be a starting point to speak about cities, about regions, about the digital age and information age that we live in today, with a huge amount of information that we have today disposable at our hands. And what we are doing with this information depends and influences not only us, but also the whole society and the environment we live in today. Digitization and participation are the main focuses of municipalities today. Urbanization is placing a lot of challenges to cities. Population is also growing at a very quick pace, and it is estimated that by 2050 there will be around two-thirds of the population living in cities, which imposes a lot of challenges to municipalities, to regional also institutions. And at this point we can say that these challenges are encompassing a huge range of environmental problems, issues, infrastructural as well, also social issues. In this regard, environmental, we all know challenges that involve air pollution, also water pollution, other types of pollutions, also infrastructural problems, which are, for example, public transportation, how we can organize all these regions in order to support all the citizens in such dense population. Smart cities are deploying many technologies, like big data, sensors, robotics, 5G connectivity, and so on. And all of these technologies are could be also used as a framework for new creation, for new production, for artists, for scientists, for technologists as well. In this regard, smart city is the one that employs technology to improve and to transform the life of citizens, of also environments they live in. In this regard, we can say that not only technology here is important, but also end-user involvement of citizens in creation of products of such regions, creating innovation. Today, we have discussions about technology that are very omnipotent in this nature, but we cannot speak about it without mentioning at the bottom of that approach, mixture of technologies also with certain aspects of smart cities, such as healthcare, environment, public safety, also implementations of different projects at which citizens also participate at. In this regard, if we don't take this holistic perspective, we cannot speak about smart cities. For example, when we are mentioning smart economy, that's basically the economy that is based on more productive, more efficient innovation, and it's more productive and more efficient because it deploys new technologies and end-user design. For example, speaking about smart living means like investing in culture, in education, in all the respects that we were listening in this today's conference. Also, the most important part about smart cities is creating a smart citizen. Smart citizen is the one that, that is proactive consumer of products. Basically, he has to be active, he creates, he is more efficient, and he actively participates in development of the region it is part of. When we are speaking about smart cities, we can see that smart cities also depend on interdisciplinary collaboration. Such collaboration is moved by the interaction of art, science, technology, and also of other disciplines. However, smart city concept is not that old, and basically how collaboration amongst disciplines developed through time, we can see that in the future we can expect that they will overlap much more and that the product of their collaboration will bring much more holistic perspectives of smart cities, which means much more efficient cities in this regard. As I already mentioned, we have digital technologies here that we can use and create a space at which co-creation and co-production can take place. But also, not only that, we can account that co-production and co-creation also can increase efficiency of new technologies. In this regard, we can create also win-win scenario for all the participants of smart cities. But if that win-win scenario is going to have a higher quality, depends on the perspective from which we approach to such collaborations. And speaking about the right perspective, what is the right perspective? It depends how we perceive value today. The colleague before me, she mentioned Mariana Mazzucato, famous economist of today, who is questioning value today also from her own standpoint of view. Who creates value, who extracts value, also are we destroying value in a certain regard? From this perspective, speaking about productive and non-productive value creation, that's a focus of European policies today. And those policymakers are also trying to develop such policies that supports innovation growth and drive direct also innovation in regard to supporting collaborative value creation that creates through quadruple helix networks as well. Those are collaborations that involve governments, public sectors basically, industry, academia, and also citizens in value creation. However, based on that, we can say that the value today depends on the relations. The quality of the value is based on the quality of relations between participants who are producing the new value. From the perspective of culture, we cannot speak about smart cities if we exclude arts and culture from its perspective. Because in this regard, we could only lose on the holistic perspective of smart environment. Basically, why art is that important in the creation, from one point is because they can develop and influence and motivate and inspire citizens to create, to be active participants of the society it lives in and the way it creates. In this regard, I already mentioned quadruple helix innovation systems at which government, industry, citizens, and academia collaborate together. This collaboration takes place at living laboratories, at which certain methodologies, participatory tools are used in order to create products. So basically, that's a place where stakeholders co-create together. They create new products, services, businesses, and technology in real-life environments, and the structure of living laboratories is based on the community and technology and organizational structure. Today we have heard many examples on how these collaborations are taking place, but today we are lacking a lot of methodologies and participatory tools that should be more experimented, more used, more iterated in order to define specific methodologies that we could use in different contexts that is more applicable to different sectors as well. And also that are deploying science, art, and technology solutions in development of the smart city. In this regard, we need much more projects that are focused on such tendencies, and I will not speak about specific examples because many of these examples were already mentioned. And I will just conclude this talk with the natural rhythm, natural cycle that happens in the world. And it's also related to living labs in smart cities, and basically these environments will develop into time, but we need to support it, to ask for more changes in policy frameworks, and to ask for more funds, more support that would involve science, art, and technology more in the creation of such cities. For example, there is a famous effect of a hummingbird, and it shows how changes happen in the natural world. We have a flower, a hummingbird, and they perfectly, as a different organisms who are absolutely different in their biochemical structure, but with their needs as well, and so they collaborate in a perfect way, and they create a natural cycle that is the part of the nature and that creates the whole system that we live in today. We can that also apply with living laboratories, where the change is also taking place in the similar regard, and we can see how ideas in one place can strike ideas in another field, and that is how the value is created today. So I'm just calling for a more efforts in supporting levels at the European level, so we could have more projects, more funds, more support in regard to create cities that are more collaborative in its nature. Thank you.
She has no eyes. They say she's blind. But through yours, she sees just beauty. She has no face, but she cannot hide, no matter what you try. She has no body, but through yours she dances, as if facing mirror. She has no voice, but through yours she never stops sharing. She has no taste, but the taste of life she is. She has no ears, but oh tenderness, she hears through yours. She has no brain, but she takes everything as miracle. She has no wings, but with your dreams she flies as heavenly perfume. She is a riddle. If you solve it, she is gone. If you embrace it, she is your freedom. This is the end of RELOGIA Edition 1, Human Dimension.